Don't throw away broken glass bottles like these anymore. These shattered pieces can be extremely dangerous if you accidentally step on them. And that's when I started wondering how many useful materials people throw away every single day without even realizing it. So today I'm going to test an idea that could turn this waste into something practical and surprisingly valuable. First, safety comes before everything else. Broken glass is unpredictable. Some pieces look harmless until light hits the edge and reveals how sharp they really are. So before touching anything, safety glasses and thick gloves go on first. Now all the broken bottles are placed carefully inside a heavy bag. This keeps the small fragments from flying outward while we break them down further. And honestly, controlling the glass fragments matters a lot here because tiny, invisible shards are usually the most dangerous part. Now let's move to the mold. For this project, I found an old plastic basin that was already damaged and partially torn. Most people would probably throw this away too, but the shape is still extremely useful for what we're about to create. Using a utility knife, I carefully remove the bottom section first. The reason is simple. When the basin sits flat on the table, later we don't want the plastic flexing or bending under pressure. A warped mold creates uneven concrete thickness, and uneven thickness can weaken the final structure. Now the upper rim also gets trimmed away. Slow, controlled cuts around the edge. Thin plastic strips fall onto the table one by one. This step may look simple, but cleaner preparation usually creates a cleaner final result later. Now the basin gets placed upside down onto the tabletop, and using hot glue, I seal the entire edge carefully. The glue flows slowly around the perimeter while the basin gets pressed firmly downward. The purpose here is preventing air gaps and stopping the cement mixture from leaking underneath later. Even tiny openings can create surprisingly messy problems once the concrete becomes fluid. Now we need to strengthen the mold from the inside. So I prepare a container full of sand and begin filling the entire basin completely. The sand is pressed downward firmly by hand. Compact, dense, stable, and honestly, this matters more than most people expect. Without internal support, thin plastic molds can deform under the pressure of heavy concrete. Now it's time to prepare the outer mold. I found a second basin slightly larger than the first one, large enough to cover it completely. Again, the bottom section gets removed first. Then hot glue is applied around the edge exactly like before. But before placing the larger basin into position, there's another important step that should never be skipped. Release oil. Using waste oil, I carefully coat the outside surface of the smaller basin and the inside surface of the larger basin. Just a thin, even layer, not too much. This oil acts like a separation barrier between the mold and the concrete. Without it, removing the mold later becomes extremely difficult and can even crack the finished project. But too much oil creates another problem. The concrete surface can develop stains, weak texture, or uneven finish marks. So balance matters here. Now the larger basin slowly lowers into place over the smaller one. I take a moment to center everything carefully because symmetry becomes very noticeable later once the final surface is smooth. Now screws are driven into the outer mold to hold both sections firmly in place. Then hot glue seals the remaining gaps around the edge. At this point, the mold system finally feels solid and ready for concrete. Now let's prepare the additive mixture. Inside this cup, I'm mixing PVA glue together with water. This acts like a homemade plasticizer for the cement mixture. PVA helps improve bonding strength while slightly reducing internal porosity. In simple terms, it helps the concrete hold together better while also improving surface durability. "5 kilograms of white cement. You can mix sand into the formula if you want to reduce cost or create a rougher texture. But honestly, if your goal is cleaner color and stronger glass visibility later, pure white cement creates a much more attractive finish. At first, everything still feels rough and crumbly, so the mixing continues slowly by hand, folding, pressing, turning the mixture repeatedly. Too much water here becomes a serious mistake. Wet concrete may seem easier to pour, but excessive water weakens the final structure and increases shrinkage cracks later. So instead of flooding the mixture, small amounts are added gradually until the texture feels thick but workable. Now the crushed glass gets poured directly into the cement. Immediately, the mixture begins sparkling under the light. Large fragments, tiny reflective particles, different shades hidden throughout the mixture. And honestly, this is the part I enjoy most, because you can already imagine how the surface might look after sanding later. The concrete mixture gets poured slowly into the narrow gap between the two basins, a little at a time. Then pressure is applied downward by hand to compact the lower sections tightly. This helps push trapped air upward before the mixture hardens. And honestly, trapped air becomes one of the biggest enemies in projects like this, because hidden bubbles create weak spots and ugly surface holes later. Now, as the mold begins filling near the top, I place a circular foam piece directly in the center. This will create the drainage hole later once the concrete cures. By the way, where are you watching from today? And have any of you experimented with glass or concrete projects before? I always enjoy learning techniques and ideas from other DIY builders around the world, so leave your experience in the comments below. Now there's still leftover concrete mixture remaining, and instead of wasting it, I decided to turn it into a matching planter base. The process is almost identical. First, release oil gets applied to the plastic mold. Then, the remaining concrete mixture is poured inside and leveled carefully across the top surface. Slow smoothing passes, removing excess material little by little. Now we wait for the concrete to cure completely. A full week later, the molds are finally ready to come apart. To make removal easier, I pour boiling water over the plastic mold first. Heat helps soften and slightly expand the plastic, making separation much easier. And honestly, this method works surprisingly well for stubborn molds. Now the mold slowly releases, and finally the concrete base slides free. At first, the surface still looks rough and dull, but now comes the transformation stage. Using an angle grinder, I begin sanding the surface carefully. Gray dust starts covering the table while the top layer slowly disappears. And then something interesting starts happening. The hidden glass fragments begin appearing underneath the concrete surface. Small reflective pieces, sharp color variations, tiny sparkling details everywhere. And honestly, if you use brighter glass colors, the decorative effect becomes even stronger. The screws come out first, then a utility knife carefully slices through the outer plastic layer. Slow movements, careful pressure, trying not to damage the concrete underneath. And finally, the entire mold separates. Now we can finally see the full result for the first time. A flower planter created from broken glass and cement. At this stage, the surface still feels rough, so sanding continues again using sandpaper. Long, smooth passes across the surface, back and forth repeatedly. But because sand was added into my mixture earlier, the final color looks slightly darker and less vibrant than expected. So I decided to repaint the surface to give it a completely different appearance. If you avoid adding sand in your own mixture, you may not even need paint at all, because the white cement and exposed glass already create a beautiful finish naturally. Now, after painting, everything changes completely. The planter suddenly feels cleaner, brighter, and far more decorative. And honestly, this is one of my favorite parts about projects like this. Something dangerous and unwanted slowly transforms into something useful and surprisingly beautiful. What started as broken glass bottles and damaged plastic basins has now become a colorful handmade planter with real decorative value. And beyond saving money, projects like this also remind us that many discarded materials still contain hidden potential if we're willing to look at them differently. So what do you think about this transformation idea? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe because there are still many more useful DIY projects coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.